My name is Hoda Afshar and I'm a visual artist working predominantly with photography and film. I was born and raised in Iran and moved to Australia in 2007, and now I'm based in Melbourne. My work engages often with the social and political issues of the time and the places that I feel quite connected to. And at the heart of all the works that I make, as diverse as they seem, is the concern with visibility. And it's often related to issues that addresses communities and people that find themselves on the margins of the society. Aura is a work that I started making in 2020, and it started by a fascination with the images that were coming out of the events of 2020, basically, and how we were all experiencing those events merely through the black glass of the monitor or the screens on our mobile phones. And I started collecting the images online, and it was at the beginning of the bushfires that the images were quite surreal and hard to believe. And then it was coincided with the beginning of the pandemic in China and Iran, my home country, and I was hearing the news about it, but we were untouched by it here. Then there was the threat of war on Iran. And as someone who lives between these two spaces, here and Iran, having to deal with these extreme events was something that I found quite challenging, and being disconnected from my family and everybody. And then it was Black Lives Matter, and one event after the other that really was like what was connecting the most through images for me was this feeling of suffocation. And they all involved fire, smoke, and I was looking at the footage and videos of shrouded bodies, that everything was like quite surreal and unbelievable. Like one of the meanings of aura is, ghost and also breath in Greek. And the ideas of, suffocation, smoke, and all of that was quite present in all the events that we were witnessing online. And so, yeah, I wanted to capture that similarity in these crises that we were dealing with, and also experiencing these events without physically experiencing it. The inspiration behind the installation of the exhibition comes from the show The Family of Man, curated by Edward Steichen. The show was curated in 1955 and first exhibited at MoMA. And it was, as far as I know, the first time that photography was also documentary photography treated in an artistic context. That became an iconic exhibition that at the time brought 500 images from different photographers across the world together in one exhibition to capture an image of the humanity at the time and where the world was at. And the intention was to show us all as like human society as equal, and our struggles and joys and everything that captured, the world of that period, which was after the World War and so on. So the show had this very large scale images, also smaller ones. It was like overlaid, and the photographers, contributed all the images there as, something that was not about the author at the time in that show, but it was more about, photography as a whole and the image of humanity as a whole. And that's why I chose to use the same kind of visual representation of this exhibition, because these photographs are made by hundreds of different photographers that are taking fragments of it, of each photograph, and showing it, and also was to capture the world that we all shared and crises that we all shared at the time together. I added another element to the project for the National, which is a video work, and it's looking at the footage again that I collected online of different ongoing wars that are involving bombing at the moment. And because of the experience we're having in the last year or so, and also the aura of war is quite present in our day-to-day experience. And I often wonder, like in the news, we listen to, the news of bombing and destruction and war. It's like a passing event to us, but the scale of destruction, I often wonder like how big it is and if it can ever be undone, And so the desire to undo the war for me was only possible through imagining it through images. So it's just reversing the footage of the war and the bombing and destruction by looking at the buildings and cities going back, to where they were before the bombing. We do realize the scale of the destruction. And the title is Undone's got two meanings. It's also like incomplete, and also refers to that, dream of undoing the war. The work in the National is as dark as it looks, but it's trying to capture that time and moment in history and looking at the close-up faces of other people's suffering, those that we actually often exclude from, the basic privileged rights of a citizen, or like parts of the world that we see as, the hierarchies of sympathy that exist in our relationships to the world and different geographies. I think it's trying to capture that image of the humanity as a whole together, as a reminder, like how the family of man tried to do at that period.